Culture shocks when moving to Portugal. If you're moving from abroad, there are some things that may leave you a little bit mind-boggled. I've been living in Portugal for 12 years and I'm going to share with you some of the things that may leave you a bit perplexed. First and foremost, when you go to a restaurant, you have to pay for the bread and butter. Yes, you do. They do this so you don't gorge yourself with bread and butter and then not order your food. But you know what? The food is a lot cheaper in restaurants, so you're not going to need to fill up on that bread. Get used to those grandmas and actually everybody giving you a kiss on the cheek. It's the Portuguese way of saying hello. Get ready to wear your flats because those cobblestones are very slippery. How many times can I tell you that I've got my stilettos stuck on those cobblestones and actually the shoe stuck on it or slipped all the way down with those very shiny shoes. So make sure that you wear the appropriate footwear when you're walking down the cobblestones in Lisbon or in Porto. The notion of time, especially in anything that's administrative, be sure and make sure you have that time because when you're going to places such as the Finanças or the CEF, you're gonna wait a very long time. Things take time in Portugal, so understand that there's nothing you can do. You cannot rush it. The more you try to rush it, the worse it's going to be. So take your patience in your own hands and breathe. Surprisingly, when you go to pharmacies, when you go to bakeries, when you go to the hospitals, when you go to private clinics, you're going to be offered what they call Asena. Asena is a ticket. That means you get your ticket and then you wait in line until your number is called. That sometimes can be quite a long wait. Don't forget to grab your ticket because if you don't, you know what? You're going to be waiting for a very long time. I've been waiting many times. When I didn't get a ticket, I thought they were going to call my name. They may refer to you as doctor, as professor, as an engineer. What's up with that? Well, that's just the formal way in Portugal, depending on your degree. If you have a PhD, if you have a higher level education, they're going to refer you to as professor or professora. That means professor or professora, which is the female and male version. So which one is it going to be? Also, engenheiro, engenheira, engineer, or doutor or doutora. That doesn't mean you're a doctor, it just means that you have a high level degree. Also regarding formality, the Portuguese are very formal and often they'll refer to you in the third person. For example, they may call my name. Senhora Alexandra quer fazer isso. That means Alexandra would like to do this. It's their way of speaking and it's very formal. Portuguese driving, very often they think that they're Schumacher. They can drive really, really fast on one lane and they can drive really slowly on the other. There are quite a lot of accidents on the road and not always the best driving that I've seen in Europe. However, it seems to work and the speed limit is usually respected. The Portuguese are very traditional and they're very family oriented. Kids are allowed everywhere, which is wonderful, but on Sundays, forget to call a Portuguese person out for lunch or out for dinner. That is reserved for family and our critical family days. Some very large properties in Portugal are usually difficult to acquire. Why? They're owned by 10 to 15 relatives. The Portuguese usually have very large families and they leave their properties in inheritance. So this usually leads to rather large complications when buying a property. It is normal that it will take that amount of time to resolve. But it does mean that you can get a good deal. I was rather surprised when you enter some apartments in Portugal, you're gonna see very small rooms. Yes, they live in these 7, 8 square meter bedrooms with small bathrooms. Why? They had large families, so usually what they did is have lots of little small rooms. Today, what we usually do is tear down those walls and make a large open space. Furthermore, about properties, most of the kitchens are closed off. It's very common for Portuguese to have staff and helpers that are required in the kitchen, and usually that means closed kitchens. These days, we tend to like to open those kitchens up. The Portuguese love investing in commercial spaces and shops. Very often, you'll see that they buy out all the shop spaces and tend to even live above them in the apartments in the same building. They like to be the owners of that building and not rent it out or even sell it out. Portuguese love their football. Depending on what football team you're part of, there could be large riots and discussions between family members and between friends. You have quite a few of them. You have Benfica, you have Sporting, you have Porto, and depending on which one you go for, you may make a friend or make an enemy. The Portuguese love their cuisine and love their lunchtime. We're quite used to skipping lunches and carry on working. In Portugal, it is common to sit down and have a long meal. The Portuguese are very proud of their cuisine and they do love their bacalhau, which is the salted cod. Although these may be culture shocks, I see this in a very positive way. You wouldn't like to have everything the same, would you? That's what makes it quirky, and that's what we love about Portugal, is having these differences. I would love to know more about your opinion, your experience in moving to Portugal, and what are your cultural shocks when you came to Portugal. Please comment down below, subscribe to my channel, and I'll share with you more of my tips. And of course, I'd love to answer your questions about moving to Portugal.